This story is a work of fiction, inspired by real events. Names, dates, locations, and identifying details have been changed or dramatized to protect privacy and enhance the narrative. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental or used fictitiously. This content is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not aim to glorify crime, promote violence, or pass judgment on real individuals. Viewer discretion is advised. Some scenes may contain mature, disturbing, or triggering content. What you are about to watch could have happened anywhere, to anyone. It's inspired by real events. Whispers of truth, buried beneath layers of fiction. We've changed the names, the dates, the locations, but the emotions, the betrayal, the fear, those are real. This story is not meant to accuse, only to reveal, to make you question, who do you really trust? If stories like this keep you thinking, long after they end, hit subscribe, smash like, and drop your theory in the comments. Now watch closely, before the truth disappears again.
The sound of laughter filled the apartment, bright and unstoppable. It belonged to Jade Monroe. To her friends, that laugh was a kind of signature, bold, unapologetic, impossible to ignore. She laughed when she rapped in the studio, she laughed when she burned her toast in the morning, and she laughed hardest when she was nervous, as if humor could shield her from the weight of the world. Jade Monroe wasn't just alive. She was vivid. In the mirror, she painted her face like armor, eyeliner as sharp as her lyrics. In the streets, she walked fast, headphones in, the rhythm of her own beats carrying her forward. In the quiet, she curled up with her phone, exchanging late-night messages with the boy she trusted too much. There are moments that cling to memory. Jade recording at 2 a.m., her voice spilling words about love and betrayal. Jade pulling on a jacket, stepping into the city lights like a star who hadn't yet been discovered. Jade telling her best friend that she believed she had finally found someone who saw her. That same someone would take everything away. Now the laughter is gone. The walls that once held her voice hold only silence. The apartment is still, its air heavy with a memory no one wishes to replay. This is Jade Monroe's story. To know Jade Monroe was to know fire. She lived in a small but carefully curated apartment near the city center, where the air often smelled faintly of hairspray and late-night takeout. Posters of her rap idols hung beside her own sketches of outfits she swore she'd wear on stage one day. The place was cluttered but alive, much like her. Her mornings followed ritual. Coffee, strong and sweet. A quick post online, selfies that glowed with confidence, even when her eyes told another story. Her fans, thousands of them, cheered her on, queen. Icon. Sister. To them, she wasn't just a model or rapper, she was proof. Proof that you could survive, shine, and still dream even when the world wanted you erased. By afternoon, she was on the move. A photo shoot in a borrowed studio, an audition, a gig at a tiny venue. At night, the microphone was her confessional. The small lamp on her desk lit stacks of notebooks filled with verses about heartbreak, identity, and survival. The pen was her weapon, her voice was her shield. But shadows crept in. Friends noticed the shift. Jade canceled nights out. She stopped answering messages quickly. Her energy, once unshakable, dulled. When asked, she brushed it off with a smile. Love is complicated, she said. People wouldn't understand. There were moments no one forgot, bruises explained away as clumsiness, arguments overheard but dismissed, a nervous glance when his name lit up her phone. Her world was filled with ambition and dreams, but beneath the music, the light, and the applause, a darker rhythm had started to play. And soon, that rhythm would drown out everything else. The final day of Jade Monroe's life began like so many others, with nothing to suggest how it would end. Morning light crept through the blinds, striping across her cluttered floor where notebooks, sneakers, and makeup brushes lay in a scatter that only she could navigate. She brewed coffee, humming one of her own hooks as the kettle hissed, then filmed a short video for her followers, a smile on her lips, the caption, "New track soon. Keep watching." But behind that screen, another conversation was unfolding. Texts to her boyfriend, a 17-year-old she often described as passionate but unpredictable. The thread began with jokes, slipped into an argument, then went silent. Friends later scrolled through the messages and noticed what Jade hadn't said. Short replies. Long pauses. The rhythm of unease. By early afternoon she was out, groceries in one hand, headphones in the other. The woman at the corner deli remembered her stopping to chat, laughing about a photo shoot she had lined up. A neighbor saw her juggling bags, calling, "See you later." That would be the last time most saw her alive. Evening brought tension. One neighbor swore they heard raised voices in the hallway. Another claimed it was just a door slamming. A third said Jade's voice cut sharp, "Not here, not now." Her phone activity told its own version. A 1-minute call. Then a text, unanswered. Then silence. When police arrived later, the apartment didn't read like a place of peace. A handbag lay overturned near the doorway, its contents scattered as if dropped mid-struggle. Jade's cracked phone screen glared from the floor. A lamp had been knocked askew. There was no forced entry, no valuables missing. Burglary was the wrong story. The room spoke in fragments, and none whispered accident. Outside, in front of the building, the tragedy had unfolded. Witnesses described confusion. Jade collapsing, a cry for help cut short, then the echo of hurried footsteps retreating. Some swore they saw a teenage boy running. Others only remembered the sound, sneakers slapping pavement. The scene was blood and chaos. A young woman who had dreamed of stages and lights now lay motionless, her life ending where she had tried to build it. And the boy she trusted most had left her world in silence. The first hours after Jade Monroe's death were chaos. Detectives tried to thread a story from fragments, while rumors grew louder than facts. The obvious theory was robbery. A young model, visible and stylish, could have been a target. But her purse was there, wallet untouched. Jewelry on her wrist. Nothing missing. Next came the idea of a stranger attack, a random act of violence. But surveillance footage told a different tale. The lobby camera showed no unknown figures trailing her. No shadow lurking in the stairwell. Some whispered about a prowler, a jealous fan, or a hate crime. Jade had enemies, they argued, people threatened by her voice as a trans woman breaking into the spotlight. But the forensic trail was stubborn. Defensive bruises marked her forearms. The cracked phone by the doorway suggested it had been ripped from her hand. This was no strike from the shadows. This was personal. Witnesses fed confusion. One neighbor insisted Jade had argued with someone outside her door. Another swore she had been alone. But in that noise, one detail repeated, the boy. The teenager who was always nearby, always circling her world. Detectives began to strip away the layers. Not robbery. Not a stranger. Not a faceless prowler. The violence had come from inside Jade's life, from the person closest to her. As false leads fell apart, suspicion tightened like a noose. And all roads led back to him, the boyfriend who claimed to love her. Under the harsh lights of the morgue, Jade Monroe's body began to tell its final story. The medical examiner's voice was calm, clinical, but every word carved deeper into the truth. Her forearms bore crescent-shaped bruises, as if fingernails had been driven into her skin during a desperate attempt to block blows. A deep, dark mark along her jaw showed where a fist, or something just as heavy, had struck with force. Several ribs were fractured, blood pooled beneath the surface, silent proof of violent impact. The toxicology report returned nothing. No alcohol, no drugs, no sedatives. Detectives had half expected to find something that explained a weakening of her defenses, but the results were brutal in their clarity. Jade had been fully awake, fully aware, when she fought for her life. Trace evidence pushed the case further. Her phone, screen cracked from the fall, held a smudge of fingerprints that were not hers. Fibers clung to her jacket, traced back to the inside lining of a gray hoodie, one detectives knew belonged to her boyfriend. And then, the CCTV clip. Grainy, distorted, but unmistakable, a young figure, shoulders hunched, moving toward her building around the very time neighbors recalled hearing raised voices. Each finding stacked upon the last, like steps in a staircase built of science and inevitability. For Jade's family, the reports were unbearable. They had prayed for something quick, something painless, but the evidence showed struggle. Pain. Resistance. Their daughter had gone down fighting, and the one she fought was the same boy she had once trusted with her heart. The morgue had given Jade Monroe a voice. And that voice pointed in one direction. Straight at him. He was only 17, but in the interrogation room he looked older, shoulders hunched, face tight with denial. The detectives let silence fill the space, the hum of the air vent and the faint scrape of his chair against the floor amplifying every twitch, every sigh. At first, his story was neat. He hadn't seen Jade that night. He was at home. Alone. But then came the messages from her phone, projected on the wall. His words in black and white. The argument. The unanswered reply. His neat story began to fray. He adjusted. Said yes, they argued, but he had walked away. Then came the hoodie fibers. The fingerprints. The grainy CCTV figure slipping into her building. His hands began to drum against the metal table. His voice cracked, the calm mask slipping with each new piece of evidence. When asked about the scratches on his arm, he muttered about falling. When pressed again, he shrugged. And then came the words that chilled the room, she always made things bigger than they were. It wasn't just a denial. It was a shifting of blame, subtle, cutting, as though even in death, Jade bore responsibility for her own murder. Outside the interrogation room, the community was divided. Online, hashtag spread like fire, hashtag justice for Jade clashing with comments from those who insisted he was just a kid. Some whispered he'd been troubled, unstable, too young to fully understand what he had done. Others had no patience for excuses. They saw obsession, control, and violence, the marks of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. In the room, the silence grew heavier. The boy fidgeted, the fluorescent light humming overhead, his eyes darting anywhere but toward the detectives. Every answer contradicted the last, every denial sounded thinner than the one before. The case was tightening around him, piece by piece, like a vice. And soon, it wouldn't just be detectives demanding answers. It would be a jury. The courtroom was heavy with anticipation. Reporters angled their cameras. Jade Monroe's family filled the front row, eyes fixed forward, bracing for every word. At the center sat a boy of 17, small in frame but carrying the weight of a murder charge. The prosecution began with precision. Their case unfolded like a staircase, each step built from evidence. They showed the crescent-shaped bruises carved into Jade's arms, proof she had fought desperately. They displayed the fractured ribs, the toxicology confirming she was sober and alert. They walked jurors through the fingerprint smudge on her phone, the fibers clinging to her jacket, the grainy CCTV image of a hooded figure slipping into her building. The medical examiner testified, voice steady but tinged with sorrow, describing how each injury told a story of resistance. Jurors shifted uneasily as photographs flickered on the screen. One looked down, another scribbled notes quickly as if to avoid the images burned into their eyes. Then came Jade's friends. One described how she'd grown quieter, less radiant, her energy dimmed by his presence. Another recalled a bruise Jade brushed off as, just clumsy. A third shared Jade's chilling words, he loves me, but sometimes love hurts too much. The prosecution's case was methodical, clinical, devastating. But the defense struck back hard. They painted the teenager as a child, impulsive, confused, not capable of calculated murder. They tore into witness accounts, highlighting contradictions. One neighbor swore she heard shouting, another swore it was only a door slam. "Which is it?" the defense attorney demanded, his voice sharp. They attacked the evidence. "Fibers transfer easily in relationships," he said. "How many times do you think Jade Monroe wore that jacket in his presence? And fingerprints on a phone? Tell me, is that proof of murder, or proof of intimacy?" When the boy took the stand, the air shifted. He sat small in the witness chair, his voice soft at first, almost trembling. He admitted they argued, admitted anger. But then came the shift. Asked about Jade, he exhaled slowly and muttered, "She always exaggerated things. She liked the drama." The words landed like poison. A mother in the gallery gasped. The jury watched him more closely now, not as a child, but as someone blaming the woman who could no longer defend herself. The defense urged sympathy, insisting he was too young, that there was doubt everywhere. The prosecution countered with clarity, "Jade Monroe's body carries the truth. Her voice is in the bruises, the fractures, the evidence. And that voice says guilty." The jury listened in silence, every word pressing down. When the final arguments ended, they filed out, carrying the weight of Jade Monroe's life, and his. The doors closed. The silence was unbearable. The jury returned hours later. The air in the courtroom thickened. Reporters leaned forward, pens poised. Jade's family clutched one another's hands. The judge asked for the verdict. "Guilty." The single word broke the room. Jade's mother sobbed into her hands, her body folding with grief and release all at once. Her father's face was stone, lips trembling as he stared straight ahead. Friends clung to each other, whispering Jade's name like a prayer. The boy sat motionless. His eyes fixed on the table, his jaw set, as though the verdict had not reached him. A mask, cold and unbroken. For a moment, it was clear, remorse was absent. The sentence came swiftly. His age was weighed, but so was the brutality. Years in prison stretched before him, his life forever defined not by potential, but by the violence he chose. Outside, the streets roared with reaction. On social media, Jade's name surged again, #JusticeForJade trended worldwide. Her fans posted her songs, her photos, her laugh caught in short videos. They wanted her remembered as more than a victim. They wanted her remembered as the woman who dreamed, who fought, who lived with fire in her veins. Inside the family home, the victory felt hollow. Justice had been served, but Jade Monroe would not walk back through the door. The laughter that once filled rooms was gone, leaving silence in its place. Her story became larger than the trial. It became a warning about obsession dressed as love, about control hidden as care, about the thin line between devotion and destruction. And yet, her name refused to vanish. Because in the end, it was not just the jury's voice that was heard. It was Jade Monroe's. Jade Monroe's voice was silenced, but her story does not end here. Every time her name is spoken, every time her music is shared, she lives on. If you believe her story deserves to be heard, share it. If you believe justice must never be forgotten, keep her memory alive. And if you want to stand with us as we uncover the truths behind the cases that shape our world, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and join the conversation. Because silence protects no one. But together, we can make sure voices like Jade Monroe's are never lost again.